Hey, you won't believe what I found at the thrift store. It was my birthday, so I wanted to spoil myself and buy some new clothes. I saw the shoes hanging down, so I wanted to fix them. I wanted to see if there were any more shoes hanging down, so I looked through the jeans. I figured there were more shoes down there, but I didn't expect to see a pair of Jordans down there. When I grabbed them, there were the Bred ones from 1985. But wait, hold up, $70 for a pair of shoes at Goodwill? Hey, that's damn near a crime right there. What the heck? But hey, paying 70 bucks for a pair of shoes that's worth a couple thousand, say less. So here are the sneakers that are old enough to be my dad. They honestly don't even look too bad. Off camera, you can't really tell how dried out the rubber sole is, but there's no more grip on the outsoles. And with most 85s now, the ankle padding has completely dried out, but not as dry as your ashy elbows. Now the first thing I'm gonna do is to take out the outsole. The soles are stitched onto the upper, so we're gonna have to remove the stitching first. I'm using a flathead screwdriver because I just find it easier to use when I'm removing the stitching. I'm also going to use the flathead to pry off the outsoles from the upper. While I was working around the heel, I noticed that the back panel isn't completely stitched on the upper. It looks like they did a simulated stitch on the back panel. You can tell that they ran into some issues stitching the back panel because they had to stitch over their previous stitch lines. And you can see where they burned their thread to secure it and then continued on. That's kind of crazy to see, but I'm going to keep removing the outsole and just worry about that later. If you have a pair of 85s on and you're wondering why they're not as comfortable as your recent retros, this is the reason why. All of the foam that supports your heel has completely crumbled and dried out. Luckily, we're going to replace the whole outsole to fix this issue. The next thing I'm going to do is to remove the top layer of the leather with my Dremel tool. I'm going to put this mask on for you because there's going to be a lot of leather debris flying around. Before we move on, I have a quick word from my sponsor because Daddy's going to buy his little girl a pony. Yo, big shout out to POIZON for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my code YT01 and YT02 to save up to $20 off on POIZON. I got these shoes from my thrift store to use as donors, but I don't know if they're legit or not. I don't want to use fakes for this project, so I'm gonna get them authenticated for free. I've paid for authentication services before, but it wasn't worth the $10 to $20 a pair, especially if you're buying multiple pairs in a month, so it adds up quite a bit. So I'm gonna use POIZON to authenticate the shoes for free. So what's dope about POIZON is that they legit check for all categories with more than 350 brands and 100,000 supported items. It's dope because POIZON isn't limited to only authenticating shoes. You can legit check your clothes, bags, belts, collectible toys, and jewelry. They have a two-step easy process to get your results in 3 minutes. You don't have to wait a full 24 hours and still pay for the service. So click on the link in my bio with your phone to get the service for free. I started using POIZON's free authentication service last year, and I want to thank them for sponsoring today's video. POIZON also sells fashionable shoes and outfits for the best prices. So if you want to buy sneakers off their site, use my code YT01 and YT02 to get $20 off POIZON.com. This method is called skiving. I'm not really that great at it, but practice makes progress. Once we're done skiving the leather, the next step is to prep the midsole donors. The donors I'm going to use are the 85 varsity highs. I'm also going to use the Destornillador Cabeza Plana to remove the outsoles. Voy a usar acetona para ayudarme a terminar el trabajo. I'm gonna cut out the sock liner to see if I can reuse the padding on the donors. The sock liner is glued to the foam, so I'm going to use a blow dryer to help me melt the glue, essentially making it easier to separate. To separate the glue from the back panel, I'm going to use an air fryer. Now I'm going to use the lowest settings, the lowest heat for 10 minutes, and it comes off super easy. Spoiler alert, it's not going to work because it's not as wide as the 85, no drizzy. Now the next step for me to do is to remove the old glue from the outsole. I'm also using a 60 grit sandpaper bit to roughen up the outsoles too, to help me bond the leather even better. Now once that's done, I'm gonna dye the soles using the coffee method. I'm gonna use instant coffee because I don't want to deal with the coffee grinds afterwards. And shout out to Mercury MFG for this tip. That didn't work as well as I planned. I was using the Ziploc to pretty much vacuum seal the soles so then I could use less liquid. So I'm gonna try another method where I don't have to use as much water. So what I'm doing is I'm adding glue on the edge to simulate the factory glue that gets dried up over time, and I'm hoping that the coffee will dye the glue. Alright, so this time I'm gonna use a shoe box lined with saran wrap. Alright, so I'm just gonna use a method that I've used before. It just takes up a lot of water. Before I replace the sock liner foam, I'm going to remove the footbed and the stitching that's holding the sock liner together. That's just crazy how much play this has. We're definitely gonna have to restitch the heel too. I've never done it before, so it's gonna be interesting. So that's something we gotta do first before we replace the ankle padding. I bought a few red threads online. I know the photos don't really match the actual product, so I wanted to make sure and buy multiple. And I'm glad that I did because one of them was way too bright for the red that was shown on the photo. And I want to see if I could darken it up with some coffee. My thread just came in the mail, so I'm gonna see which color matches better. This one's a little too bright. It's definitely too vibrant. It's not gonna match well. Now this color is probably the closest one that I have out of the few that I bought, but it's still not a perfect match. Now that I got the thread that I'm gonna use, I'm gonna start cutting away at the old stitching. I'm gonna glue back the back panel to secure it in place, and then I'm gonna stitch it with my Chinese patcher machine. I had more issues using the sewing machine, so I'm just going to stitch the rest by hand. Now that we fixed up the back panel, it's time to cut up the ankle padding. It's looking nice and comfortable in there. I'm also going to show you how I get that beveled edge. I mark my 1/2 inch foam with my template. At the top portion of the foam, I'm going to cut at a 90-degree angle so it's nice and straight. But when it comes to the bottom half, I'm going to angle it at like a 35-degree, 40-degree angle. And that's how I get my beveled edge to look pretty clean. I'm gonna glue the foam back in place. I'm gonna add glue on both the foam and the back of the leather. Now the next step is secure the sock liner to the foam with adhesive spray. Before I stitch back the sock liner, I'm gonna have to glue them in place so it doesn't move while I stitch. I have my heat gun set at 350, but what comes out is actually half of that. The new donors aren't one-to-one to the original sole, so I'm gonna have to manipulate the heel counter and make it shorter so it'll fit flush on the new soles. And I always try to check the fitment to see if I need to make any more adjustments. Finally, we're almost getting there. The next step is to glue the midsoles back to the uppers. I've seen Vic Almighty add adhesion promoter to the soles before gluing, so I wanted to test out and see how well it works. I'm gonna start applying glue on both the soles and on the upper. Once the glue's been applied, I let it cure for about 20 minutes and reactivate the glue using my heat gun. Now we want to carefully line up the soles to the upper, because once you bond it, you can't really mess with it anymore. Now that we've reattached the outsoles, it's time to glue back the footbed. Now the last thing we need to do is to stitch up the soles using a sewing awl. I want to make sure that these shoes last for a very long time, so I'm going to rehydrate the leather with mink oil. And that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to check out your local thrift store because you'll never know what you'll find. Take care and God bless. Yay!